All right, live from work. Um, Chapter 2, Lesson 2, Joint Fundamentals. And already did the progress check, so um, kind of maybe it's a little cheating. It's not cheating, it's legal, but maybe it's cheating yourself. But what I did is I kind of just brute forced the um, progress check and kind of after the progress check, I realized that um, the best way to complete this is to go through and to do everything instead of um, maybe it's a balance. Skimming, progress check, skim, and then um, do the progress check again. Maybe that's one way to do it. But I found that just doing straight up reading, reading everything, it's the best way, but it's also the longest way. Um, Probably the quickest way that I can think of is doing a progress check, just getting an idea of where the questions are coming from, and then focusing your reading on that because it lists all of the lesson objectives, but there's typically only three lesson objectives. So, anyway, that's a little background. Let's go in on the. Let's see if I can do this. Lesson objectives. Lesson objectives for lesson two. One, describe how the services integrate total force assets in joint operations. That's to the understanding level. Categorize each service's missions, capabilities, and limitations in support of joint operations in an interactive computer simulation. That's analyzing. Make use of joint functions with specific service capabilities for notional operational scenarios in an interactive computer simulation. That's applying. Um, all right, so okay, okay, sorry. Okay, just edit that part out. Lesson overview. Comprehending joint operations requires understanding the capabilities, limitations, and interdependencies each service presents, as well as how joint forces are organized and employed to conduct operations. This lesson focuses on the military services, service presentation, and command and control of the joint forces in a joint and interorganizational environment, with particular emphasis on U.S. Air Force and air power employment. War is waged in three elements, but there is no separate land, air, or naval war. Unless all assets and all elements are efficiently combined and coordinated against a common objective, their maximum potential power cannot be realized. General Dwight D. Eisenhower. This picture of the Joint Service Color Guard advancing the colors. You have the Navy, Marines, Air Force, um, Army, and Coast Guard, looks like. And is that Space Force? I don't know. It might be Space Force. I'm not really familiar with their dress uniform. Lesson one introduced you to the meaning of the term joint, as well as the importance for military planners and operators to adequately understand how to incorporate the joint functions. As you read through this section, you will see that the different services have complementary capabilities that fall within the same joint functions. Comprehending the capabilities, limitations, and force presentation of each service is essential to understanding that larger joint context. The lessons this lesson presents the basic operating concepts, capabilities, and unique characteristics of each service. It also introduces the Joint Force command and control organizational concepts that are required to make the Joint Force operate. A student activity. Joint Fundamentals Command and Control. It's called the E School of Graduate PME. So, seeing as how we dropped that name April 1st, 2022, probably we should update that slide. Command. Command is the authority that a military commander lawfully exercises over subordinates, including authority to assign missions and accountability for their successful completion. Control. The process and system by which commanders plan and guide operations. Unity of command means all forces operate under a single commander with the requisite authority to direct all forces employed. This is a key aspect in joint operations. Chain of command. The succession of commanding officers from a superior to a subordinate through which command is exercised. Combatant command authority. Unique to combatant commander. Planning, programming, budgeting, and execution process input. Assignment of subordinate commanders. Relationships with Department of Defense agencies. Directive authority for logistics. Operational control. When delegated, authoritative direction for all military operations and joint training. Organize and employ command and forces. Assign command functions to subordinates. Establish plans and requirements for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance activities. Suspend subordinate commanders from duty. Tactical control when delegated. Local direction and control of movements or maneuvers to accomplish the mission. Support relationship when assigned. Aid, assist, protect, or sustain another organization. Excuse me. ADCOM, administrative control, fulfills Service Title 10 responsibilities. It is not command authority. Authority over subordinate forces with respect to admin support normally exercised by service component. Coordinating authority. Authority to coordinate functions, activities involving forces of two or more military departments, components, or forces. DERLOF. DERLOF. Direct liaison authorized. Authority to directly consult or coordinate an action with the command agency within or outside the organization. Then there's a chart here of the DoD organization with the president at the top, with the Secretary of Defense in a direct line. Then off to the left, you have the extending from the president is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Then underneath the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, you have the Joint Staff. Underneath the Secretary of the Defense, you have OSD staff. You have defense agencies, field activities, and geographic commands and functional commands. Then off to the right of the Secretary of Defense, you have military department secretaries. So all of your Army, looks like your Navy and your Air Force, um, they're military department secretaries. Underneath them, you have the military department secretariats. Then underneath them, still the military department secretaries, you have service chiefs. And then underneath the service chiefs, you have their staffs and forces. Secretary of Defense, geographic commands. Northern Command, European Command, Southern Command, Central Command, Indo-Pacific Command, Africa Command, Space Command, Functional Commands, Special Ops Command, Transportation Command, Strategic Command, Cyber Command. The world with commanders' areas of responsibility. There's a map here of all of the commands. You have U.S. NORTHCOM, which is interestingly enough, it's the North American continent, including Canada. Then you have U.S. PACOM, which is the Pacific Islands, and you have U.S. Southcom. U.S. PACOM also includes, it looks like, China and India and Australia. You have U.S. AFRICOM on the continent of Africa. You have U.S. CENTCOM, and interestingly enough, CENTCOM includes Egypt. Uh, Egypt's are not Egyptians are not Africans. I think it's because maybe Egypt spans two continents. A lot of people don't know that, but I didn't even know that until recently. Um, U.S. UCOM includes Greenland and the European continent, including Russia. And then you have Antarctica, which looks like it is included based on the color in U.S. PACOM, interestingly enough. AFRICOM is the most recently created GCC, or Geographic Combatant Command. Um, U.S. PACECOM is not, oh wow, U.S. PACE. U.S. SpaceCom is not pictured on this slide as it's in space. North America falls under NORTHCOM since 9/11. Russia falls under EUCOM, as we said. SOCOM, Special Forces Command, Special Operations Force Provider. Synchronized planning of global ops against terrorist networks. U.S. Transcom, Strategic Lift, Air, Land, Sea, Commercial. U.S. STRATCOM, Strategic Command, Execute, Strategic Deterrence, Space, Cyberspace, Enabler, Missile Defense, ISR, IO, CBRNE. Normally CBRNE is CBRNE, but spelled CBERNE. Network Ops. Cybercom, Cyber Command, defends the DoD information network, strengthens DoD cyberspace capabilities, and unifies the direction of cyberspace operations, integrates and bolsters DoD's cyber expertise while supporting combatant commands. Components. Service component will always have one if there are service forces. Command of all assigned attached service forces. Commander is a special face of service to the JFC. Plan and conduct operations at direction of JFC. Provide service-specific functions, admin and logistics support. Functional component. Normally compare command of forces from two or more departments to accomplish a particular operational mission. Commander is normally service commander with preponderance of forces and ability to see to dual head, plan and conduct operations at direction of JFC. Specified authority over forces made available to them. These are all specific to the functional component. Functional components will be designated at the discretion of JFC. They are optional. Their focus may be geographic or functional missions. They are commanded by the commander with preponderance of forces and ability to see to. Typically dual-headed as service component focuses not, or excuse me, focus is just operations, no service responsibilities, unless dual-headed. Air Force, the Common Four. Air Force Service Component Commander at any joint level, service responsibilities include recommend proper employment of Air Force forces, organize, train, equip, sustain Air Force forces, maintain internal administration and discipline, provide service intelligence and force protection, operational responsibilities, prepare air and space plans to support JFC, task plan coordinate, allocate air and space effort, make air apportionment recommendation, act as airspace control authority, area air defense commander, AADC, and Space Coordinating Authority, if so designated, and that is the Comma 4. The Comma 4 acts as the Airspace Control Authority. That's like a foot stop. Area Air Defense Commander and Space Coordinating Authority. So the Comma 4 is like wearing 3 operational hats. Doesn't say that here, that's just kind of my interpretation. Comma 4 has other duties as designated: ACA, AADC, SCA. The Common 4 may be supporting and or support as designated. The Common 4 has service responsibilities. They are the service face to the JFC and perform service-specific functions, organize, train, equip. They also have ADCOM responsibilities, including admin and discipline. The Common 4 also has operational responsibilities. The Common 4 is a warfighter. She plans, tasks, executes operations. The C, or JVAC. If designated, preponderance of air forces and ability to effectively command and control responsibilities, air employment. Develop the Joint Air Force, develop the Joint Air Operations Plan, or JAOP. Recommend joint air apportionment to CJFC. Allocate and task air capabilities forces. Oversight and guidance during execution. Coordinate joint air ops with other components. Act as ACA, AADC, SCA. That's the CFAC or the JFAC. Supporting commander as designated by JFAC. The CJFAC responsibilities are all operational and joint or combined, which is what the C stands for. These include planning, allocating, tasking, executing. The CFAC or JFAC performs other duties as assigned: ACA, AADC, SCA. The JFAC or CFAC has supporting relationships with other components or as designated. And that is the student activity. Required materials are JP1, Doctrine for the Armed Forces of the United States, pages 2:1 to 2:13, and the preface. So again, for this course, you got to read JP3, that's chapter 1 or lesson 1, and JP1 so far in lesson 2. And lesson 2 is 11 pages. Lesson 1 was 15. The Joint Force Big Picture. The links below will take you to the U.S. Air Force Doctrine website as the Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, Joint Electronic Library. Open and bookmark the links for future reference. Note that the U.S. Space Force is in the process of writing its own formal doctrine in 2020, beginning with the Space Capstone publication. So I have to believe after 2 years that the Space Capstone publication is complete. And captive audience, I'm going to check it. Space Capstone publication. It's 41 pages. Spaceforce.me. So, okay. So, this was last updated in 2020. So, for the two things, they had operation Resolute support still on there, which is now a defunct operation that needs to be updated, obviously. And the space capstone publication needs to be integrated in the lesson plan as well. Each service brings a unique mix of capabilities to the Joint Force, and those must be organized, integrated, and employed under a single Joint Force commander. This section will examine how that is accomplished. Joint doctrine. Each military service has a body of written doctrine, or will have, in the case of the U.S. Space Force. A space capstone publication was expected to be signed May 2020. Okay, it is now July 2022. Let me see when this document was signed. What was the book? I imagine it's available. It is. Um, let's see. Forward from the CSO, signed 1 month later in June 2020. So awesome. Doctrine represents the best practices, operational norms, and tactics, techniques, and procedures that comprise the family business. To know a service's business, you must understand its doctrine. The Air Force is very doctrine light in terms of officers knowing and being familiar with doctrine. So I want to distinguish myself. I can learn the doctrine, but again, knowledge doesn't necessarily distinguish and cause and translate into promotion. I can be a knowledgeable officer, but strats ultimately make the day in terms of who's going to promote and who won't. That's just my view, anyway. And please see the disclaimer. My views do not reflect the views, although I'm doing this video at work in a uniform. My views don't reflect the views of the United States Air Force or the DoD. They are expressly my views. To know service business, you must understand its doctrine. The service publishes their doctrine in a series of publications or pubs. For the U.S. Air Force, the LeMay Center for Doctrine Development and Education is responsible for managing, organizing, and overseeing the catalog of doctrine. For the U.S. Space Force, the organization of and responsibility for its body of doctrine are still being determined. Since joint means, I guarantee you that's already been determined. Who is responsible for it? So this needs to be updated. It just lesson two needs to be updated. Since joint means participation by two or more services, it follows intuitively that joint doctrine captures those best practices in a multi-service context. The Joint Electronic Library is a separate body of joint publications. It is notable that when service doctrine and joint doctrine do not agree on the topic, joint doctrine takes precedence. Both U.S. Air Force and joint doctrine have topically consistent numbering systems. For example, the topic command and control of air power is covered by U.S. Air Force Annex 3-30 and by joint publication 3-30. It is likely that a topic resembling command and control of space power will be contained in a publication with 3-30 nomenclature in the future. Let's see. Um, I'm going to do Space Force 3-30. Let's see. Let's check that out. Oh, snap. Netflix has canceled the Steve Carell starring comedy series Space Force. The topic says Space Force canceled. And I was like, wait a minute, what? TV show. I think it was started as a a joke, but as they saw like Space Force wasn't a joke, it's kind of like this isn't funny anymore. It's a real thing. Um, and we laughed at President Trump when he did it. We did. Um, but I don't know. I mean, to be determined. It's not funny anymore. It's like, all right, say what you will. Okay. I don't see anything about Space Force 3-30, so I will get back to learn more. No required reading for this page, but to learn more, Department of Defense Dictionary of Military Associated Terms. Seems like I work faster at work. U.S. Air Force capabilities and presentation of forces, including the total force. Excuse me, I'm sorry. 5 minutes. We're gonna get ready to wrap this one up just because 30 minutes is where we want to set the limit. So I'll stop on page after I finish this third page. The U.S. Air Force is the nation's decisive air combat force, capable of a wide array of missions across the airspace and cyberspace operating environments. However, many U.S. Air Force officers are familiar mainly with their own organization structure and mission. They may have little exposure to other squadrons, wings, or directorates with very different mission sets. U.S. Air Force units are sized and organized very differently, with a wide variety in mission, operations, tempo, chain of command, and resourcing. One wing may be extremely expeditionary and deployed most of the time. Another may operate 100% from garrison. One squadron may be full of high demand, low density assets. Another may consist entirely of personnel. One major command's or MATCOM staff may be organized significantly different than another's. Jointness brings different units and capabilities together from across the service, but the variety begins with the U.S. Air Force. Even with this variety, there are some common characteristics across units. Units all have commanders, the basic building blocks of the U.S. Air Force command structure. Flight, squadron, group, wing, numbered Air Force, and MATCOM remain consistent. Understanding the Air Force broadly requires examining both the similarities and the differences, capabilities and limitations, and unique force presentation structures. Required material. Low C. Reshaping the Air Force for great power competition. It's kind of a weird article. Presentation gives a brief overview of the organization, mission, and capabilities of the U.S. Air Force. This presentation does not include the removal of Air Force Space Command from the service to form the U.S. Space Force in December 2019. Hence, references to AAF SPC or space superiority should be understood in light of that. Note that some capabilities and platforms are similar to those of other services or other units within the U.S. Air Force, while others are unique. What makes each military service distinct from the others? How does their role differ? What uses do their different capabilities have? Click to download the presentation below. The United States Air Force. Headquarters, U.S. Air Force. And you're going to have to read all of it. To learn more, look at the U.S. Air Force fact sheet. Why are we including an article? Never mind. I can critique it all day. I can critique everything. Anyway, this will wrap up part one of the lesson two review. Be back in a few. Yes, I'm whispering. I don't know why.